Okay. Okay, we are recording now. So I'm here today with Amber Jarman-Crainey, who I've known for, well, a little bit over a year and a half now. And we first met when she was in the middle of, I guess, or just at the start of a major project for her, which was Bound. And that was an immersive experience. I kind of want to say a play, but it wasn't really like any play that you've ever been to. This was at the Barge House, which is just behind the Oxo Tower in London. And maybe you could just, because I always have difficulty, as I said, explaining what Bound actually was. So maybe Amber, you could start off by telling us a little bit about that and how it came about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing with the work that even sometimes I found it a little bit challenging to explain to someone because it's really about experiencing it. And I think anyone who experienced it had such a different experience. So it's not as if it's not like a one size fits all.
Yeah,
Everyone had a different experience. Everyone, even down to me deciding whether what I would class it as. Is it an experience? Is it theatre? Is it dance? It's really a mixture of everything. But in essence, Bound was an immersive theatre show that stemmed from 9 storylines of grief and loss. And the way that myself and the company presented that was through physical movement, dialogue, set, and music. So we offered and invited the audience to enter Barge House and free roam around 5 floors of the amazing kind of industrial building, which is Barge House. So some people said it felt a little bit like an exhibition. Some people felt it felt a little bit more like a play, but I think it was such a mash of everything. But yes, it was for me. It was an immersive theatre experience that pulled upon multiple different artistic forms to demonstrate different reactions to grief and loss.
right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you said that about different experiences because I actually ended up going on the first night, and then I ended up going on the last night, and my
Mhm.
experiences on both occasions were very different. And I think what I'd said to my friend who I went with the second time was, it's almost like you want to come again and follow a different story or a different thread because you can't really follow everything. But what I wanted to do actually, I felt like go back a little bit here because I feel like I didn't possibly introduce you that well in terms of, this was your baby, your project. You created all of this. So, like, in terms of what you actually do, maybe tell us a bit more about, like, if somebody was to ask you what you do, how do you normally answer that question about who you are and what you actually do?
So again, really, really challenging because I think as an artist, you end up doing a lot of things and
Yeah.
there's multiple strands that you need to go down, whether that's just to try and make money or do the things that you love. Like I have so many different passions. But I started off by training as a dancer, and delving into physical theatre and I started to understand that my anything that I was creating always had a deep layer of personal experience, very much actually not even just personal experience but kind of wrapped around with trauma that I had experienced. And I think that kind of opened up the door of actually, I'm really interested in human behavior and understanding why we do the things we do and how we can physicalize that, or how can we express ourselves not just vocally but also through movement and storytelling. um, and I started to love the kind of blend of dialogue and memories and the physicalization, and I think that's really interesting because as when I was younger I found it very challenging to vocalize how I was feeling, So I'd stay quiet,
Right.
because I didn't know how to get it out. But then when I found movement, it was my way of expressing things, and it was this kind of happy space in the middle, this bridge in the middle between being silent and being able to express myself. Um, so the more I developed my interest and my practice, I found a space in the industry that I felt really happy and where I really wanted to um, push myself, and that was within immersive theatre and physical theatre. And that's kind of how the Bound evolved. And I've worked in lots of different projects, but mainly it is within physical theatre and immersive theatre, and also immersive settings as well. So that's a little bit about kind of how I got to this stage, and now I choreograph and movement direct and produce live work.
Because I was thinking as you were saying that, there was probably a point when you were much younger where you kind of felt like this is what I want to do, and at that point it might not have been necessarily physical theatre or something like that, but it feels like you kind of knew that you wanted to go in that creative direction, and maybe because you said you couldn't verbalize things, dance was an obvious thing for you. Do you remember what age you were when you first decided I want to be a dancer?
I don't think I ever had a moment of I want to be a dancer, because I
Right,
think I was just living in the moment of enjoying moving, because I hadn't when I was really little, I hadn't done that. But what I do remember is never feeling fully connected to anything
right,
aside from I really enjoyed um, playing and creating stories using like dolls.
right. Okay.
And I think I did that for longer than the norm of children doing it. Like
Right.
because I just loved it, and I loved creating the characters and the storyline, and I would do this and create these little scenes. And the more I look back, I think, well, that's really what I do now, but
Well,
just
I was
with
thinking that,
people.
I was thinking if, in terms of the way you describe yourself and the way I've experienced you is, you know, if I had to say one thing about you, maybe it would be you're a storyteller, and maybe
Mm,
you don't always tell stories in the conventional way that other people do, but that's what you're doing. And,
mm.
I think Bound wasn't just one story, it was nine stories, but I'm guessing that how much input did you have from other people around those stories, or was that all completely, were each of them completely your own idea?
They all stemmed from one thing that I think I am quite good at is I see the end result
Yeah.
straight away. So I will literally wake up in the middle of the night and I'll be like, that is what it is.
Wow.
I've got
That's,
the concept locked
yeah.
down. I know exactly what's happening. Um, the thing then that I have to kind of track back on is how do I get to that point?
Yeah.
But I already have this full concept in my mind. And once I fixate on something, I want to make that happen.
Right.
Um, and so I think from the off, once I kind of solidified that this is what I wanted to create, it was there and I knew. And even in work, I was in the studio yesterday, and straight away I was like, this is what I want to create. I'm not sure how I get there yet, but I know that's the end result.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting actually, because when I was at university, I got diagnosed with dyslexia, and someone told me that the thing with dyslexia is that it's the processing that's a challenge, but most people with dyslexia can see the end. It's the getting there. So it always makes me think of that when I already have this clear vision of what it is. And then it's like, whoa, Amber, now you've got to find your way there. But with the different storylines, I had the idea, I had the end kind of result of like,
Yeah.
okay, I really want to delve into these different things. So some of the storylines were the therapy room, which was a guy navigating his way to therapy and the difficulties with trying to express himself through language, which wasn't of a physical form. One of them was called Shelter, which focused on a homeless guy and his story of how he got there. We also had an abusive relationship and lots of different. One was around dementia, so really broad themes. But then when I got into the studio with each of the performers, we then kind of rooted into my life and their life stories, and then started to find the creation. And that's what I really love. Like, collaboration is the key to everything, I
Yeah, I
think.
mean, I get that sense of watching you work, and we'll come to this in a bit later because I have subsequently seen you working,
Mm.
and I got the sense that you want your performers to not necessarily improvise exactly, but to have their own input, that what feels right for them. Because the one of the stories I was following the first time I went to see it was actually the one that you ended up doing at the end, because one of your dancers got injured. Um, and that's the way you played it was very different to her. But I kind of feel like, it was um, a choice, perhaps, for her to be, well, let's be honest, way more physical than you were. And I don't know if that, I'm speculating here, but I'm guessing that might be how she got injured, because one of the things I thought about her performance was how incredibly physical it was. But I mean, am I right? Is that true? Is that you encourage
Mm.
them to kind of take it somewhat in their own direction?
Massively. And for me, there's the framework, and there's um I will come into the studio and I've got maybe some rep to teach, and then we delve into it, and then they might improvise, and then we pull it apart, and we will sit down and have conversations and discussions about things that they connect to the story, because I think as a storyteller, they need to connect to it. You can't just fake it. You
Yeah,
can, but then the audience aren't they won't connect to it as much.
yeah,
So how can we connect the performer to the story? And I think that's a key thing. And I think that's also why Bound did very well, because the audience felt like it was a truthful performance. So, and going on to the section that you was talking about was Lucia ended up getting injured quite early on in the run. And I ended up taking over that role. So, um, and it changed. So the framework was still the same, but we're completely different performers.
yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily get cast for the same things that she would, and me taking it to this more, her storyline was subconscious mind, and it kind of went into a psychotic episode where for me that just didn't feel that I could connect with it. And not necessarily that it's something that she could connect with, but it's somewhere that she could take it in her physical form, where for me it wouldn't have felt natural. The audience wouldn't have connected to me doing that as well. And I just knew that. And on top of that, having to perform in the work, and also then having to direct it all. So
yeah,
I was also aware that I had to keep some reserve. But I think what the nice thing was about it is it was seeing two different sides of that story, and being able to play with the levels of energy you give something. And I always make sure that all the performers in the company make sure that they know that, okay, the day that they turn up might be different to yesterday's performance. Yesterday they may have given 100%, and that was amazing, but today they might have to knock it back to like 60%, and that's still amazing because it's honest, and it's where they feel they are today. And I would hate to be the type of choreographer or director to say I need 100% every day, because I don't think it's honest, and then I don't think you get the response. Where by me giving the permission to say, listen to your body, listen to how you are today, they usually end up giving 100% anyways. But I
yeah,
think it's given the permission and giving them ownership of something, which I think is really important. And also just knowing that we're all different, we all move differently. We're never going to be the same as what it was the night before, because naturally with immersive theatre, the audience changes, the set's going to be changing, you're changing in life. One day you might have had a really good sleep and you're feeling energized. Next day, something in your life could have happened. So I think respect that and let that be a part of your performance.
yeah. And I mean, I felt that. I felt that the performances were very real, and in the sense that there was a part of that where or some people were actually, as members of the audience, interacting with with the performers, and that there were moments there that I found incredibly moving because it felt, and I'm not the only one that said this. People around were saying this as well. It felt like you were part of their story in some way, which I think brought it to life even more. You know, so from that point of view, I think it made it much more realistic. And I think I'm right in saying maybe that those performers were choosing who to interact with, or maybe some nights they didn't interact as much as on other nights. And that would have been, the therapy room one, for example. People were often sitting in the chair opposite him, but that was a choice of the audience, and what he did was up to him. He didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to say anything or do anything, but I think sometimes he did. And I think
Mm,
that's a choice of the performer as to whether or not that feels authentic as well.
And I think there's elements of when we was in the creation and the rehearsals of given parameters of, okay, so obviously there's got to be some restriction, like
Yeah.
the performers can't just go willy-nilly and do anything that they want, because it would completely, there was a really tight amount of time they had, because within
Yeah, there was
this big
timings, wasn't there?
building,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and you had to, and if you got lost and start just chatting to an audience, you'd be completely off, and that's going to throw someone off. So
Yeah,
it was about giving boundaries and also making sure the performer feels safe as well. So
yeah,
if
absolutely.
someone interacts with you, it's about understanding, okay, does this feel right that I can interact with them and give them an offering, or give them this moment, or do we make sure that actually we need to just stick on our timing? So each of the different storylines had their kind of, yes, you can lean into this, or maybe you have to make sure that in this section there's no interaction. So kind of in the background of everything, it seems very seamless, and it was, but they knew the kind of parameters around the interaction with the audience.
Yeah, yeah. So just going back a little bit on this, because I think this is really important and relevant to how I came to get in contact with you after this performance, after this show as well, was around this subject of grief, and what it was that brought you to doing this show. And in the aftermath of this as well, you set up a charity, which we'll talk about in a second. But can you tell us a bit more about your story and your background, and what brought you to that subject of grief, and why was that so important to you?
Yeah. So initially, like I say, I've always been interested in immersive theatre, and I always knew from probably my final year of university that I wanted to create an immersive work. But there was never a burning desire to tackle a theme. So I kind of just parked it and just carried on, but with the idea of, that's something I really want to do, but I don't have anything strong enough that I could create from.
Yeah,
And then in 2020, I lost my older brother. And it was a really challenging time, which naturally it would be. And that obviously trickles onto life now. But the reason that the work came about was that for a long time after we lost him, I was in a real state of, I was just numb, creatively
yeah,
numb. So then when you think about it, if I really struggled to vocalize when I was younger, and movement was my dialogue,
yeah,
then that was knocked away again. And then I found myself really struggling, and alongside feeling numb and not being able to express myself, I was experiencing extreme panic attacks, which I've never experienced, feeling out of control of my body, because my body was the thing that I was most in tune with. So
yeah,
it was this sense of, I can't verbalize the things I want to, the way I'm feeling. And every time I try to, it's almost like my body shuts me down by having these panic attacks. Um, so I was starting to realize that grief brings on all these physical reactions that I just never knew was a thing. I thought it was just sad. Like, it was the biggest loss I've ever had. I thought I was just going to be really sad. But there's so many complex layers of sadness and trauma, and I found it really this weird sense of when it was happening, just like I don't even know what I was feeling, but when I was starting to um, level myself out almost, I became really interested in it. And I became interested because I'm the type of person that needs to be in control. I need to understand what's happening because in my mind, if I understand what's happening, I can fix it. And I like to fix things. I like
Right.
things to be in my control. Um, and so when I was having these panic attacks, I wasn't doing any dance. I wasn't doing anything. I was literally either not eating or I was overeating. I wasn't doing anything creative. I was kind of just, and this was all in the height of COVID as well. So layered on top of that, it was a very confusing time, anyways, and especially for the arts, because there wasn't really much going on. So I then decided I needed to seek out some help, and the NHS provided me with 12 therapy sessions and also pushed for me to go on an antidepressants. And I refused the antidepressants only because I wanted a practical solution
Yeah.
to this because I knew I didn't know what it could be, but I remember saying, and she was the most lovely GP who's actually now gone on to really support with my charity, which it's really nice and a nice full circle. But um, we just kind of spoke about actually before maybe these practical solutions, maybe I just need to let my body just it's almost like the antidepressants needed to just take away some of the stress that I was having and the upset. So I ended up going on antidepressants and also doing a few of the therapy sessions. I struggled with the therapy sessions,
Yeah.
because as like I've said, talking was a challenge, and I think sometimes you just don't gel with the therapist, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, I felt almost like she was really sad for me when I was telling her.
Right.
And I was at this stage where I wasn't emotional when I was telling her things because the antidepressants kind of knocked out all my emotion. I was
That's
just
the
kind of
trouble.
like,
They do. They kind of numb you. Yeah.
mm. I just was delivering facts of really sad things.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like delivering. And all I could see was her slowly, like in the corner, just getting smaller and seeming like she was really upset. And I remember just looking at her thinking, gosh, like this is sad. Like the fact that you're so sad, this is really bad.
Yeah.
But I just had no emotion there.
Well,
And then
it,
I
it
kind of was like
feels like
saying,
it's almost like it was happening to someone else. It's like you're observing,
mm,
the way you're describing it's like you're observing this all and thinking, gosh, this, when you said, gosh, this is really sad, it's almost like you're experiencing something else. It's not you almost.
mm, yeah. And I just remember, I just thought, "Oh, I just know this isn't for me. And maybe it just wasn't the right time. Because then I did go on later down the line to have talking therapy, and it really worked. Um, but I think it depends on so many factors in your life and at the time. Um, but I had to get myself to a stage where I felt able to have that. And so once after that, I didn't continue. I tried three of the sessions, and then I went back and said, "Look, I just don't think this is right for me right now." But I did feel like I got to the stage where I was able to go and access and be in a dance space again, and that was the turning point. I went to just a contemporary class in a London dance studio, and it was the first time for a long time that I could escape from the reality.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes, like I know a lot of people say, like, you shouldn't escape, you need to deal with it. But I think sometimes having a pause is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Having like an
absolutely.
hour and a half to just think, okay, someone's going to show you a routine and I'm going to just try and move and do it. It was really good for me. And that was the moment where I was like, I need to move and I need to look after myself. And from there, that's when I started to think, okay, I need to create because movement helps not just me, it's going to help other people.
Well, that
Um,
was
so
that was
yeah.
part. I mean, everything you've just said there was, and we've had conversations like this before. So I know that when I first saw Bound, and then when I contacted you afterwards, it was very much because of the way you were speaking about your journey after your brother died, and what you were saying made perfect sense to me because I am a therapist, obviously, and
Mm,
I'm of the same opinion that sometimes. talking therapy just isn't what people need. But what might be what they need, and this is what you were talking about, is actual physical movement. Because trauma is stored in the body, and maybe movement itself in some way releases that. And then what you're saying after that is you got back your creative urge. And again, creativity, some of the things I work with clients is around movement, but also creativity. How can we try to express what happened to you, whether it's writing or music or dance or whatever. It's that idea of bringing that out in some way. And I think that's part of why you were interested in setting up this charity as well. Am I right?
Massively, and it's gone on a complete journey, the charity. It started off, so after Bound, the initial charity idea was that I was going to set up a charity called Bound, which was going to facilitate creative workshops for people that are struggling with grief and maybe not able to communicate or vocalize how they're feeling. It was kind of this nice in-between stage where it just felt like a safe space to try something different, whether it be movement practice, whether it be art, whether it be to journal. But there was something in me that just felt that wasn't enough. I didn't feel that was completely right. And it didn't, although I think that it is needed massively. And it's definitely something I needed. But I just felt like that wasn't necessarily for me personally and what I've been through, and I needed something that connected maybe more to my brother,
Right.
and what and the connection with him, and I think my thing was actually before what comes before grief. There's something that happens before that, whether it be a loss of a job or whether it be a loss of an opportunity or a loss of a person. Um, and I just wanted to take it like back to the initial thing that causes grief. And so the charity has evolved, and the charity is now called Brother, the charity. And it's a men's mental health charity that, again, still focuses on facilitating workshops, whether that be through physical, whether it be through any artistic form. And we've got some amazing workshop facilitators. And it's a community, and it's bringing on and giving people the opportunity to access workshops and events that sometimes are not there or maybe feel out of reach. So that's kind of the journey that we ended up going on for the charity. And I'm really excited to be officially launching that in 2026.
That's fantastic. Well, I'll put a link when I put this out. I'll put a link to the website so people can check it out, because I think that's
Yeah.
it's amazing what you're doing. And hopefully maybe at some point I might be getting involved as well, because there
Yes.
are certain things that I definitely think I could contribute to that. And one of the things is, I'm really passionate about men's mental health at the moment, especially because, working in schools, I work with girls and boys. But what I found is that boys definitely struggle more in terms of being able to express themselves or feel like they can. If I go into a room with a girl who's experienced some kind of trauma, not saying it's easy, but very often she will be able to vocalize that, and she'll talk.
Yeah.
Whereas boys will sometimes, they'll just sit there and shrug their shoulders, and
Yeah.
not know what to say at all. And I think that's something we have to recognize, is that boys do find it harder. Maybe that's just society in general does not encourage
Mm.
boys to show their emotions, and then
Yeah.
that goes into adulthood.
Massively. And I think there's so many factors to why not everyone, but a lot of men in society do struggle to talk and communicate. But actually, us being able to bring a physical element sometimes distracts from the purpose of being there and allows people to open up a little bit,
Yeah.
which is hopefully going to be beneficial. And the charity is not about, we're never going to fix anyone. It's not about that at all. It's a bit
No.
like Bound. You was never going to go to the performance and feel fixed. That's not it.
Well, do you know what?
It's
I
just
have a saying which I use a lot with almost everyone I work with. And I will say this to people. I say, I'm not here to fix you, because actually you're not broken. You know,
Yes.
you are the way you are because of everything that has happened to you, and that's not broken.
Mm,
That might be that there
no.
are certain things you want to change, and we can do that, but we have to start from the point of view of every human being is reacting to their experience, and that might
Yeah.
not be very nice, that might be very unpleasant,
Hmm.
but it's still a reaction. It doesn't mean you're broken.
No, absolutely. And I think it's for myself and the trustees of the charity, it's opportunity. It's just giving a space to be seen if that's what you want, or to be heard. And I think that's all that can be done on our end. And I really hope that that does then translate to more for everyone who's a part of the charity.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of time here. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about before we end, and that was your next project, because having got involved and chatting to you quite a few times, you then asked me to kind of consult a little bit on this new project,
Yeah.
which because we've already mentioned a little bit about Bound having this element of a therapy room in it, and you've decided to
Hmm.
take that story further. I don't know if there's you don't want to say too much about that, or but maybe you can just say a little bit about this new project and what that might look
Yeah.
like.
No, absolutely. So basically, one of the strands of, or the storylines of Bound was a therapy room. And I think it was actually the last storyline that I worked on. I worked on it with the performer Dom Coffey, who's absolutely amazing. And I'm extracting it from Bound, but I'm delving deeper with it. I'm
Yeah,
I'm pulling it apart, and it's going to be a standalone piece, which is an immersive theatre show again, to a large scale, lots of set design, people being able to participate or observe, um, and it delves into a lot more, well, deeper themes. I think Bound was a little bit more surface level, and people won't say it's surface level because the response we got from that was probably, out of all the storylines, it was probably the most it wasn't like the best response. It was the most emotive responses. People, it touched people when I um and I wanted to delve deeper into it. And I think with this now, we're sculpting out the storyline more, we're sculpting out the character more, and also because it's a standalone piece, it hasn't got the padding of everything else going on. It has to be really strong on its own. We're bringing in a therapist as the kind of counterpart to Dom's storyline as well. I won't go, like I said, won't go too much into it, but it's
yeah.
it's we're really delving into it, and it's a complementary piece that will kind of run along the charity as well, and there'll be workshops, and they'll kind of link. So for 26 and 27, and beyond, it's a massive push within men's mental health. So
No, I mean that sounds amazing. I mean, I've met Dom as well, and you couldn't have chosen a better person to do that. I mean, he
mm,
is amazing, and it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see how that develops. Because yeah, I mean, I love what you said at the beginning. Actually, that thing, about and I think it's a great gift that what something you kind of know what it's going to look like, but then you just have to figure out how to get there. Because I think, to be honest, a lot of creative people, and I'd include myself in that, because I do write quite a lot, is I sometimes have no idea what the end's going to be like, and I wish I did, because then it gives you that kind of tunnel vision almost. I don't know if you would call it that, but
yeah.
you kind of know where you're going. You've just got to figure out how to get there, which is great.
And the figuring out is the fun part. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I love, when I already know where I know it's going to be, what it's going to be. It's, but like when I walked into the space, and once I got everything inbound, I was like, this is exact. I remember saying to my mum, I was like, this is exactly what was in my head.
Wow.
And then I just saw it in real life, and I was able to
Yeah.
walk through it, and I was able to feel it and smell it. Um, and then again with this, I know that what's in here, I'm just going to extract it, and then it's going to be there. But in the meantime, we're just having fun playing and pulling things apart and getting emotional and and delving into things.
So, can I? One last question. Can I ask? Because and there's a little bit of self-interest in me asking you this, but um, are you still open? I mean, because you're so busy and you're so focused on all of these things, what would happen if someone came along and asked you to be in a production that they were doing. Do you even have time for that? Is that something you'd still be open to?
For me to perform.
Yeah, just as a
Or
performer rather than as a creative person, as in, I've got a part that's perfect for you and I want you to do it. How would that sit with you?
I think I'm in a bit of a selfish stage of my
Yeah, no, I guess
creativity.
that. I totally guess that.
Um, and I love going to class. I love being, and actually I went to class the other day and because I love going to train and I was at like a contemporary fusion, but it was very heavily hip hop. The teacher came over and was like, "Oh, I'd love you to be in my concept video." And I thought, "Oh gosh, I never really do these things."
Yeah,
And I said, yes. I was like, okay, yeah, it's going to be short. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But if it was like a big stint of like something that I'd have to perform every night, I don't think I'm in that space, and I know what comes with that is kind of the restriction of you need to be this way
yeah,
every night. And I just think for me personally, I don't feel that's where I want to be. And it's not, and that's not even the way that I um offer the space for my company. So I'm staying in my lane a little bit. I mean, if there was tiny little bits that it was like a
no, no. I mean,
one-off
the
thing.
reason I ask is because I'm writing this piece at the moment, and I just keep thinking there's a part in here for you. And then, but then I'm thinking, yeah, but she probably wouldn't do that. Not the only way I could imagine you would do it would be like you take it, pull it apart, and you'd make it your. Well, not make it yours, but you know what I mean. You'd be like, well, I'll do this, but I think it should be this, this, and this. So I'm kind of just thinking at some point I'm just going to show it to you, and you can decide whether or
It
not.
might really resonate with me. You never know. It
Yeah,
might.
well, it's just one of those things
So
because I have another friend who's an actor, and I've already told her that I've written something for her, and I'm kind of thinking you need to meet her, by the way, because every time I think of her, I think of you as well, and
yeah.
she's in the stages of doing it. She's just finished a one woman show, which was
Mm.
amazing, and she's also her and her husband have made a feature film, so
Oh,
so
amazing.
I've just said to her, "You're going to be in this play as well." So when I finish writing it,
Yeah.
but
Well, no, do share it because you never know. Like it might just, I think that's the thing. It's about being really honest to
yeah,
if it resonates with you. Like if something came about and it was like, oh my goodness, this is completely me. I had after Bound, I had the opportunity to create a piece which I can't really go into too much because there's all NDAs around it, but I was given the opportunity to create something and it seemed it would be amazing and I'm sure it will be amazing. Um, but I just sat there and was like, if it didn't pull on me enough, and I wasn't in the stage that I wanted to create for someone else.
right,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I
No, I
think it
get that.
just depends. It depends on the project.
Yeah.
But yeah, do send that to me because I'd love
Oh,
to read
yeah, I
it.
would anyway. I mean, even if you were like, no, I don't think so, I'd still show it to you because I know you
Yeah.
would be interested. Okay, well, I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic to talk to you.
Yeah. No, it has. And thank you for inviting me to do this. It's been really nice.
Yeah.